I used to be a good girl, but not the kind you'd expect. I kept most of the rules. Well, I kept the ones that made sense. Adults said, "Oh, Ivy, she's so wild at heart." My peers said, "That goody two-shoes sure is ignorant for someone so smart." I didn't mind the attention, but it's not the kind that I desired. I wanted to be accepted and liked, popular and admired. I was too cool for school, but too school for cool. Too classy for urban, too tacky for suburban. I wasn't a tomboy. I hated sports, and I loved dresses. But it's just not ladylike to slouch, climb trees, and make messes. I kind of liked being different at first. God made me unique. Yes, I loved God so much, but I dreaded church every week. That's the place I was judged, not because I was a sinner, but apparently a prude. My skirts were too long, and I didn't laugh at jokes that were crude. They said, "I know you're a sheep, but you gotta dress in wolf's clothing. Stop being yourself, it looks judgmental and loathing. Wolves hate sheep, and they know you're a coward. Is discretion actually worth being devoured? Morality is subjective, chastity is dead. Make mistakes to learn from them." Yes, that's what they said. Am I so sheltered that I can't feel the sun's warmth on my skin? Do I have to be a prodigal son to be forgiven of sin? Is grace only limited to the broken and to the abused? Or is there enough for me, and can my testimony be used? After years of rejection, I did what I could to fit in. I dimmed my bothersome light, and I let the dark win. I had Friday night plans and plenty of stories to tell. I let my co-workers know I too was going to hell. Drank whiskey, got frisky, covered children's ears when I spoke. I let hell's fire charm me. I loved the smell of its smoke. I was still lonely, but no longer a bore. I guess no one wants to be friends with the village whore. I made all of the mistakes, and I learned nothing new, except that making mistakes hurts God, others, and you. No longer burdened by shame, I regret and cling to the hope in my calling, to stand upright and to catch those that are falling. I wasn't the only one labeled as weird or rejected for having a light that is glowing. Turns out there are many others just like me, but they're wearing wolf's clothing. I'm no longer the person I was. She was so innocent, so pure. But if you're that person, don't change. Rest assured that no matter what they say, it's never better to do what is wrong. I just wish I knew then that I was right all along. Today, I want to talk to you about my Asperger's, about Asperger's in general, what it is, what it looks like, how it has affected my life, and I also want to talk about how it's affected my walk with God and how my relationship with God looks through the eyes of someone with Asperger's. And it's going to be a long video. I wanted to start off with that spoken word so you can kind of see what my life in a nutshell looked like and what was going on inside my head. And if you're a person with Asperger's, or you think you might have Asperger's, you're not alone. And I know it feels like you're alone, but the thing is a lot of people with Asperger's try and pretend they don't have it to fit in. And I don't want you to feel like you're the only one, because I know I'm the kind of person that's worn a mask, or as the poem says, wolf's clothing. And not to say people without Asperger's are wolves, it feels like you're among wolves because you feel so vulnerable and you feel so lost and you kind of just feel like a sheep in the middle of it all. But I just want to talk about those different things today in this video. So, Asperger syndrome is a pervasive developmental disorder, and pervasive developmental disorder means that it's an issue with your development. Now, there's no exact thing that people have found that causes Asperger's syndrome, and it's very similar to autism. For those of you who don't know, it's some I don't even know right now if it's on the autism spectrum or off of it. I know it's gone on and off several times because of like sensory issues and anxiety and meltdown and a lot of different things that they have in common. But a pervasive developmental disorder is also autism, and it's a little bit complicated because most developmental disorders are kind of issues with your development, meaning you're a little bit slower in things. You get there, but it takes longer, and then also in the same way, it doesn't ever go away. You kind of always have to deal with it. But the reason Asperger's is different is because you're only slow in the social end, but everything else appears fast. You appear intelligent, you can be creative, you're so good at lots of different things that it doesn't look like you have a developmental disorder, because you see people with Asperger's everywhere that seem to be succeeding, and sometimes faster than average, and a lot of times they have higher IQs than average, just because the sides of the brain that do work correctly are I guess compensating for the parts that don't. So it appears that there's not really a developmental disorder at all, and I think that there's kind of a lack of awareness about that, and a lot of times people confuse it for a mental illness, because it is a mental illness, but not like schizophrenia is, not like eating disorders, not like bipolar, because those are mostly chemical, and those can be treated with medications, and they can be treated so that they go away. Well, with Asperger's, there's no medications for it. It's something that doesn't go away, and it's not chemical. If you have Asperger's, you're always going to have Asperger's, and so some people think Asperger's means you're crazy. Some people think it means you're stupid. You're not crazy, you're not stupid, you're just different. And honestly, people think, oh, well, if you practice more, you can change. And it's true, you can change your reaction, and you can change your the way you process the thoughts that immediately come to you, but you can't actually change what comes in and the initial reaction that not outwardly but inwardly, but you can adapt, and you can behave, and you can learn the rules, and you don't understand them, they don't come naturally. I'm still confused. I do things not knowing why I have to do them, but I do them because I know I'm supposed to do them. So don't ever use Asperger's as an excuse for not doing something correctly, or for not trying, or that really makes me mad when people try and blame their disability on something that they actually can control. And with Asperger's, it is one of the more high-functioning types of developmental disorders. I think it's probably one of the most high-functioning. So I think that someone with Asperger's is completely capable, I think sometimes even more capable, of someone without. So know that it is something that you can control how you respond based on what happened, the issues that you have with this disorder. Now, I want to read to you a list of common symptoms in women, because I think a lot of people diagnose boys, because it's mostly it happens with children. They diagnose boys with Asperger's because the traits are much more obvious in guys. With women, it's not as obvious. because women and men are different, and it's not a bad thing. We're just different, so it looks different. And I think even within people that we're different. And so, list of female Asperger syndrome traits, and this is by I think her name is Ruby Simone. She wrote a book about it, and it's called Asperger Woman. Appearance, personal habits, dresses comfortably due to sensory issues, will not spend much time on grooming, eccentric personality, may be reflected in appearance, like for instance, my hair is silver instead of, brown. Well, it's naturally brown, but, I'm wearing dark makeup, sometimes I wear blue lipstick, black lipstick, kind of things like that. Tattoos. Is youthful for her age in looks, dress, behavior, and taste. I get that a lot. Usually more expressive in face and gesture than male counterparts. A lot of times people generalize Asperger's to mean like a monotone face, and that's not the case. Sometimes we can be very expressive in our facial expressions. May have androgynous traits despite outwardly feminine appearance, thinks of herself as half male, half female. May not have a strong sense of identity, can be chameleon-like before diagnosis, enjoys reading and films as a retreat, often sci-fi, fantasy, children's books, can have favorites which are a refuge. Anyone who knows me knows that's 100% true. Can control stress management as a stress management technique, rules, discipline, rigid in certain habits which will contradict her seeming unconventionality. Usually happiest at home or in other controlled environments, may have been diagnosed as autistic or Asperger's when young, may have been thought of as gifted, shy, sensitive, etc. May also have obvious or severe learning deficits. I know a lot of times people with Asperger's could have, oh gosh, what is the name of that? Dyslexia. I know a lot of people with Asperger's can have dyslexia. I was diagnosed with ADD. So different things like that could happen. Often musical or artistic, may have a savant skill or strong talent, may have strong interest in computers, games, science, graphic design, inventing, things of technological and visual nature. More verbal thinkers may gravitate towards writing, languages, cultural studying, psychology, may be a self-taught reader, been hyperlexic as a child and will possess a wide variety of other self-taught skills as well, may be highly educated but will have had struggle with social aspects of college, may have one or many partial degrees, may be very passionate about a course of study or job, and then change direction or go completely cold on it very quickly. Anyone who knows me knows that's 100% true. Will often have trouble holding a job and may find employment daunting. Highly intelligent, yet can be slow to comprehend due to sensory and cognitive processing issues. Will not do well with verbal instruction, needs to write down or draw a diagram. Will have obsessions, but they are not unusual as her male counterpart. Emotionally immature and emotionally sensitive, anxiety and fear are predominant emotions, more open to talking about feelings and emotional issues than males with Asperger's, strong sensory issues to sound, sight, smell, touch, prone to overload, mood and prone to bouts of depression, may have been diagnosed as bipolar or maniac depressive, while Asperger's diagnosis was missed, probably given several prescriptions to treat symptoms, will be sensitive to medications, and anything else she puts in her body may have adverse reactions. 9 out of 10 severe gastrointestinal difficulties. I've had those my whole life. Stims to soothe when sad or agitated, rocking, fast rubbing, finger flicking, leg bouncing. Me, I know it was swinging on the swing set. The motion of that used to be very, very calming for me. Similarly, physical when happy, hand flapping, clapping, singing, jumping, running around, dancing, bouncing, prone to temper or crying meltdowns, even in public, sometimes over seemingly small things due to sensory emotional overload, hates injustice and hates to be misunderstood. This can incite anger and rage, prone to mutism when stressed or upset, especially after a meltdown. Words and actions misunderstood by others, perceived to be cold-natured and self-centered and unfriendly, very outspoken at times, may get fired up when talking about passions and obsessive interests, can be shy or mute. Like her male counterpart, will shut down in social situations once overloaded, but generally better at socializing in small doses. May even give the appearance of skilled, but it is a performance. Doesn't go out much, will prefer to go out with partner or children if she has them. Will have many girlfriends and will not do girly things like shopping or get-togethers or hang out. Will have one close friend in school, but not once adulthood is reached. May or may not want to have a relationship, but if she does, she takes it very seriously and chooses to remain with them only. Due to sensory issues, will either really enjoy sex or strongly dislike it. If she likes a male, she can be extremely noticeably awkward at her best attempts to let him know. She may stare at him, she may call him repeatedly. This is because she fixates and doesn't understand social gender roles. This will change with maturity. I will talk more about that later because there's so much that happened. Often prefers the company of animals, but not always due to sensory issues. So those are just the symptoms. Many of you who know me know that I have like 90% of those. Some of those not so much, but most of them I have. I think I want to talk about common misdiagnoses because if you are watching this and you're in the United States, chances are you have been misdiagnosed because Asperger's is very, very, very rare to get a diagnosis in the United States, especially with a woman. The test, even that they do for Asperger syndrome, are more based on men with Asperger's than women. But the misdiagnosis, depression, and the reason for that is because you are constantly aware of the fact that you are different. You are constantly aware of the fact that you're alone. You feel out of place, all of these things, and it makes you depressed. It makes, even when you don't know why you're depressed, you're still there. And I've fought depression my whole life. ADD, ADHD. I've been diagnosed with ADD and ADHD. Because of the meltdowns is one reason. The way that you express excitement, and I think a big thing also is with the ability to focus. You are only able to focus on what you're interested in. Naturally, of course, you can if you really work hard on it, you can, focus just like everyone else. But when you have Asperger syndrome, it's really hard for you to focus on things that you aren't interested in, especially in school settings. I didn't like math. I thought math was boring, so I would rather read or I'd rather daydream, and I couldn't focus on things that I didn't like, that I didn't have interest in. A lot of times people think they have it because they can't focus on a conversation. They get distracted with other things during conversations because they always want to direct the conversation back to whatever they're thinking. Whatever we're thinking about, whatever is going on in our mind, we keep on wanting to redirect back to that, whether it's in our work, in our interactions, and that's often confused for ADD and ADHD. Anxiety, yes, is absolutely, I guess it's kind of a true diagnosis because I'm always anxious when I'm in social situations, when I'm thinking about social situations. Sometimes I have insomnia because I'm worried about the interactions I'm going to have the next day. I think that they can be diagnosed with multiple personality because I think women in particular will change who they are to adapt to whoever they're around. And I know that I have been completely one person around someone and then someone else completely around another person. I've had identity issues just in not knowing who I am, in trying to be the kind of person to please everyone. I think that they can be diagnosed with bipolar and possibly schizophrenia because when we're good, we're really good, but when we're bad, the world falls apart. I think schizophrenia is because of our overactive imagination. We sometimes can't notice the difference between what's real and what's fake because our fantasy lives make sense to us when real life is very confusing to us. It can be confused as hallucinations. Borderline personality disorder and other kinds of personality disorders because, you know, everything with social has to do with your personality. And borderline, we can be confused with borderline personality because we don't know what the borders are. We don't know what the social rules are. We pass those things. We make people uncomfortable. We don't have filters. So that's another reason that could be a misdiagnosis. Gender dysphoria and homosexuality. I know that's not necessarily considered a disease or disorder. I know that with gender dysphoria, a big reason is since when you grow up, everything seems to be split up into boys and girls. Every social situation is girls are together and boys are together, and if you don't want people to be social, then you'll line them up boy, girl, boy, girl. And because of that social issues that I have, I never identified with women or girls, so I know that inwardly I felt like a guy because I didn't feel like a girl, but I know that later on when I did have relationships with guys, I realized that I was just different in general. But I think the gender dysphoria a lot of times comes from inability to relate to people of the same gender. Homosexuality, I think, is a big one because we're very fascinated with people of our same gender because we find them so different. I think also we notice the little things in people that someone might not notice, things about them that are different to us and mysterious to us and exciting to us. And I think that that's why, I mean, I know I had, you know, homosexuality, I was pansexual, I was bisexual, all of these different things because sex is something that we can understand. Sex is something that is not confusing to us, and that is how we relate to people because we can't relate to them on a personal level, we can relate to them on a sexual level, and then that's why a lot of us are homosexual, pansexual, bisexual. Narcissism is a big one because a lot of people think that we don't have emotions, that we don't care about others, that they only see that we have meltdowns when something doesn't go our way but whenever something bad happens to someone else, we seem apathetic about it. And it's not that we don't care, it's that we're afraid that if we show that we care the way we know how, that it might hurt people, that it might scare people. But the thing is we are very empathetic and we feel your pain and we feel your loss. And we don't know what to say, we don't know what to do, we don't know if we're supposed to hug you, if we're supposed to say I'm sorry, so we just don't do anything. We change the subject. We try and not think about it, but the truth is we still feel it, and we still feel the pain, and we still feel for you. Reactive attachment disorder was another thing I was diagnosed with, and I think I want to talk about that a little bit because I'm adopted. You kind of overreact to a lot of things when certain things in the brain aren't able to be met through early childhood, when your mother is supposed to provide certain things and when she hasn't provided that. There are kind of things that break in the brain when you're developing that kind of look a lot like Asperger's, and maybe I do have reactive attachment disorder as well. I'm not really sure, but I know that that's something that I've been diagnosed with. Women versus men. Men, when we think of men with Asperger's, we think of like Sheldon Cooper, who just says it like it is. He likes what he likes. He is who he is no matter who he's around. And that's what we think of. A lot of times with women, we want to relate to people, so we mask, we pretend to be someone that we think people will like. We learn how to mimic behaviors, we learn how to mimic people, we know how to pretend to have emotional intelligence. We can we listen to our voice and play it back, talking louder and softer. And I know I've done this, because I didn't like my voice, I would record myself saying different things and then play it back so that it sounded the way I think it's supposed to sound. Women type obsessions versus men type obsessions. I think women misdiagnose this because they don't like video games, or they don't like math, or they don't like superheroes. I like superheroes, obviously, but women might get obsessed with makeup. I know I'm obsessed with makeup right now. Fashion, boys, women get obsessed with things that women get obsessed with. So when it comes to the obsessions, sometimes you misdiagnose this because the women have different types of obsessions. I think that this is a big one for me, that people expect someone with Asperger's to be very intellectual and very intelligent and very matter of fact. And I think with women, our creative side seems to be more prominent than our intellectual side. We are very creative, and I think that part of our intelligence is a bit stronger than our intellect for most of us, not all of us though. Linguistic over mathematic. A lot of times we think people with Asperger's are very good at math and science and chemistry and those types of things, and I'm not really good at any of those things, but I'm very linguistic. I think a lot of women are good at languages and cultures and social studies, and that side seems to be more prominent in women over men. And then I think a biggest thing that misses diagnosis for women is that we appear to be sociable. We learn the rules and we try to follow them as fast as we can, when it seems like men are more isolated and more not wanting to be around people. Women can appear that they want to be social, they want to make friends, that even though those issues still exist, we hide them by pretending that we care about being social. So early childhood. I was adopted, and there was a lot of issues that came with that, a lot of identity issues that came with that, but I know that with being adopted, I kind of had the benefit in whenever I felt different and whenever I felt like an outcast, I could always go back to, oh, it's because I'm adopted, and it kind of helped temporarily fix certain issues that I had growing up. I was very literal. A lot of times people thought I was being a smart aleck because they would tell me to do something sarcastically, or they would use something that was a figure of speech, and I would take it literally. The worst one, all of these things I still struggle with. The biggest one that I struggle with right now is answering rhetorical questions. People think I'm trying to talk back. I'm not trying to talk back. It's just that if you ask me a question, I'm going to answer it. Bossy. With Asperger syndrome, you know exactly what you want, and you will let people know, and you want things your way, and if things don't go your way, there's issues. So I know I was very bossy. I knew what I wanted, and I told people what I wanted. I was very bored in school. I was focused on the things that I wanted to do. I felt like I was ahead of a lot of people in almost every subject, but I was forced to stay behind. I was forced to not move ahead in school because I had to be with everyone else. Manipulative. I think this is both personality and because of Asperger's. What I mean by that is I didn't intend to be manipulative. I wanted people to understand the way I felt, but people thought that in me trying to get them to feel what I felt, it was about me getting my way. But sometimes it was about me getting my way, and I was trying to get you to feel what I was feeling so I could get my way. But sometimes that wasn't it at all. Sometimes it was just me trying really hard for you to understand where I was coming from. Meltdowns. I had meltdowns all the time. I still have meltdowns. When sensory overload, social overload, frustration. So many things have caused the meltdowns and triggered the meltdowns, but I'm still learning what my triggers are so I can avoid them. Overactive imagination. I had imaginary friends. I had issues discerning what was real and what was fake. Sometimes I was accused of lying because, I guess it was lying. I would say certain things would happen that didn't happen at all, but I remember them happening because I just have that issue with not being able to discern the difference between what's real and what's in my mind, because everything that I think is so real to me that I can't, and even worse with dreams, I can't remember what happened in dreams or what happened in real life because I dreamt in color. I dreamt, I could lucid dream. I mean, there were so many things that was hard for me to notice the difference between reality and fantasy. Lying and exaggerating. A big thing was, I know that a lot of the lying was on purpose and was to get my way, but I think a lot of it was my false perception, and goes with exaggerating it as well. I really thought this is how things were, so I told people this is how things are, but that's not how they were, so they thought I was a liar and an exaggerator. When I said, oh, it was the worst thing in the world, maybe it wasn't actually the worst thing in the world, but in that moment it felt like the worst thing in the world, so that's what I'm telling you it was. A lot of people, again, thought that was manipulation, me exaggerating to make people listen to me to get attention. That's not what it was. It was really my perception. That's really how I saw things. And me saying that to you wasn't me trying to make you think that that was real, but me really telling you how I really felt about the situation. I was homeschooled because, again, in school I had social issues, I was bored, I was moving ahead but forced to stay behind, and with being homeschooled I could learn at my own pace, I could not have the distraction of other people, I was able to separate school and friends very easily with being homeschooled. People thought that meant, oh, how did you make friends? It was hard for me to make friends because I had Asperger's, but not because I was homeschooled. To me, there was a clear separation that this is school, this is friends, and I knew the difference because I was homeschooled, and I think that was a big benefit for me. I had a lot of obsessions that were extreme. I was into whatever movie I was watching, book I was reading. I talked about only those things all the time. Another thing was, I know that as soon as I found out I used to be obsessed with characters, and then I found out about actors, that characters aren't real, it's just people playing characters, then I became obsessed with actors and acting, and I thought that was just so amazing, and even now I'm very fascinated with it, and I love acting. I loved collecting. I had sticker books that had tons of stickers in them. I wanted to have every single color crayon, every single color marker. I wanted to have lots of types of things. I wanted to have if I liked something, I wanted to have every single one of it. I was bullied a lot, but I wasn't always aware I was bullied. And I think also I didn't realize that what I mean to say is a lot of people thought I deserved being bullied because I was perceived as a jerk that was a smart aleck and manipulative and all of those things. But I think a lot of times I didn't really notice I was being bullied because a lot of bullying with women is very underhanded and very, not obvious, push you down like with guys, hit you, call you names. I think a lot of it is just removing yourself socially from someone, I guess social type of bullying, but because I have social issues, I didn't realize I was getting socially bullied. I was lost in books, sometimes even set limitations. I was obsessed with series of unfortunate events. Sometimes I still get into that obsession, especially because it's getting talked about again, and there's more stuff happening with that. I have the tattoo. And I know that it would distract me from my schoolwork. It would give me insomnia because I would be up all night reading the books. That I was set limitations, that I could only read a chapter of this particular book I was obsessed with a day. I know with Harry Potter, I wasn't allowed to read them at all. I read the first one, and the issue wasn't because of the magic or, witches or anything like that. The issues that my parents had with me reading Harry Potter was the attitudes of the characters, that I started to develop those same attitudes towards authority because they were very disrespectful and they were very rebellious. I began to develop those same types of issues with authority. And so I wasn't allowed to read those books until I was older. And when I no longer had authority issues, there wasn't any problem with me reading them because my parents didn't, they didn't shelter me from other religions and other beliefs. And I was very aware of other things besides my family and my church and things like that. I wanted to control people. That's why I didn't have friends. I wanted to play my game, and if you didn't play my game, then you weren't going to play with me. I wanted to be in charge of my game, and I wanted to play the authority figure of my game. I wanted to be the teacher, I wanted to be the director, I wanted to be the parent, I wanted to be whatever. So when I was younger, my best friends were, when I was little, before I had my younger brothers, my best friend was my dog, because my dog wasn't going to tell me no. My dog was going to do what I wanted. He was going to be my servant. He was going to be my student. He was going to be my child. Whatever I wanted, my dog would be that. And then when I had little brothers, because they were almost 10 years younger than me, and, they were toddlers, preschoolers, they wanted to play with an older kid. They did whatever I wanted. I told them what to do and they did it, normally without any issues. I was a mini entrepreneur. I wanted to start things. I wanted to make money. I was always trying to find ways to make money. I had lemonade stands and I had all sorts of things, and I know that I wanted to make money in order to afford my obsessions. So even now, I have a lot of random type of jobs. I do surveys, I do YouTube, I do all of these different things that are just ways to make a quick buck, never illegal or anything like that. I was a pro negotiator. If you weren't going to give me my way, I was going to convince you to give me my way. And I think a lot of times that got confused for manipulation as well. It wasn't me trying to make you feel something, it was me trying to make you understand where I was coming from. I loved writing. I was avid reader, avid writer, and I loved costumes. I had tons of costumes. I loved dressing up as characters. I loved dressing up for Halloween. I loved all of the things that involved costumes, because when I was wearing a costume, it wasn't just a costume to me. It was who I was. If I was wearing a witch costume, I wasn't just wearing the costume, I was pretending to be a witch. If I was a butterfly, I was pretending to be a butterfly. And it was, I know that was popular for kids my age, but it was real to me. It wasn't just a game to me. It was real life to me. My preteen and early teen years, I was an observer of the tiny little things. I couldn't see the big picture sometimes, and sometimes vice versa. Sometimes I only saw the big picture and couldn't see the little things. But what I say by the little things is I noticed the curve. Like if I'm looking outside, I don't just see a tree, I see the curve of every leaf. When I'm listening to music, I'm not just listening to the lyrics, I'm listening to the bass, I'm listening to the drums, I'm noticing the tiny things. And I think that that's why we get sensory overload, because those little things are so big to us. Those colors are so bright to us, those sounds are so loud to us that we get overloaded. My comic book obsession began because I noticed I had a lot in common with comic book characters. They were outcasts, they were different. Superman was an alien, Batman was an outcast. All of the superheroes seemed to have something in common with me, and I really liked that they could be, and I kind of liked the whole two lives type of idea. I love the fact that they could pretend to be one person and they had this completely normal life and they convinced people that they were normal, but really they were this, and nobody knew that that's who they were. And I could really relate to that. That's another reason I was too old to be obsessed with Hannah Montana. Miley Cyrus is younger than I am, so most people that liked Hannah Montana were much younger than me. But I liked the whole idea of the fact that she was able to be two different people, live two different lives. And I found that very fascinating. My hat girl costume obsession as well. I realized I was getting too old to wear full out costumes in public anymore, so I would wear hats. And I wore different hats for different things, and it was the same thing. When I wore the hat, I was whatever that hat represented. If it was a safari girl, whether it was, baseball player, whatever it was, I was whoever that hat represented. I discovered that I loved working with children. When I was about 12, I think, I could not really fit into the youth group, but I was really too old to be in with the kids, so I instead, this is in a church type situation, I instead, to avoid youth group and to avoid being the oldest kid there, I worked with younger kids, like toddlers and preschoolers, and I loved it. I absolutely loved working with kids. The same reason I loved, when I had little brothers. They were so much fun. They did whatever I told them to. There were no rules and social type things, and it was just easy, and I liked it. This is where my sexuality kind of came in. I was an early developer. I think I became sexual around 11 or 12. And sexually, personally, I guess talking about personal relationships, I was very asexual. I didn't want a boyfriend, didn't want a girlfriend, but sexually, I was very homosexual. I thought boys looked gross. I thought men looked gross. They were ew. But women, they were very attractive. And, they had very nice bodies. They had curves. They smelled good. They looked good. And so sexually, I was attracted to women. And I hid it a lot because I didn't want a relationship. And I grew up in church. And there was just a lot of things that I didn't want to deal with, coming out. And that wasn't a big thing growing up. It's a big thing that if you feel gay or whatever, you have to tell the whole entire world. And I didn't feel like I had to tell the whole entire world, because to me it was just like, because I didn't have a girlfriend, why do people have to know that I like the way women look when they're naked? So that's just kind of how I dealt with that issue. The types of friends I had were never close relationships. I was friends with people in seasons, and normally the seasons of friends I had determined whether or not we had the same obsessions. I only liked to hang around people that liked the same things I did and that would give me my way, and that normally didn't last very long. But I did have, I guess, more than acquaintance but less than friends. I kind of learned the rules of social interaction so that I wasn't bullied anymore, and I guess these people kind of called themselves my friends, but I was still kind of an outsider. I was always in mixed groups. I liked hanging around guys and girls, but I was still always an outsider, but I wasn't like an outcast type of outsider. But the types of friends I had, they were close within each other, and I was kind of part of their group, but not part of their tight group. It was kind of hard to explain. I preferred in middle school, or like preteen, early teen years, I preferred comfort over fashion. I liked costumes and like the hats and everything, and maybe like one day a week I would do high fashion something, but I preferred to be comfortable. I always wore ponytails. I wore cargo shorts. Like for a long time I had really short hair, but when it was long I would always wear it in a ponytail. Never blow dried my hair, never curled, styled, straightened, never did any of that. Wasn't interested in makeup. I had contacts, but I preferred to wear my glasses because, contacts would irritate me and I was used to my glasses. Loose t-shirts, tennis shoes, but every once in a while I would like to dress up. And I attempted sports because a lot of my peers played sports, and because I was homeschooled and they were developing sports teams, I wanted to be part of the homeschool group and join those sports teams, but I couldn't get into it. I was clumsy, I had no hand-eye coordination, and I could not play sports. I was bad at it. um, I hated whenever I was doing a team sport and my team would lose because of me. And I think that a lot of times with, I guess, sort of acquaintance-like friendships, the ones that I did have, the times that those people really hurt me was because I caused their team to lose, because a lot of people that I knew were very competitive, and I wasn't competitive at all. I was in extreme pursuit for social interaction, but I was always exhausted in the end. I was always looking to make friends, and then whenever I think I found a friend, I would get so overwhelmed, and I hated the commitment that I had when it came to making friends. I didn't like doing because I think with friendships it's always finding activities to do, and I prefer to do activities by myself. I prefer to do activities my way. And then there's always talking. What do you talk about? No one's interested in the things I like, so why am I going to talk about the weather or the news or whatever? I'm not going to do small talk when that doesn't interest me. So social interactions were always exhausting in the end, but I was still constantly pursuing them. I was obsessed with celebrities. I felt like celebrities understood me because they were different and they had to deal with some of the same things I dealt with. I think another thing that I was obsessed with celebrities about is that I had in my imagination the type of person they were, and that type of person that they were probably isn't who they were, but I imagined that they could be my friend. They would understand me. They would get me. And I almost created fake relationships with celebrities. Even though I didn't know them, in my mind I imagined that they were my friends. And same thing with books, with characters in books and movies and everything. I imagined that they would understand me. I hated whenever people were at my house or in my room. Oh my goodness, there were so many things that went along with this. Whenever there was sleepovers, I would get excited. Oh my goodness, I'm having a friend over. But when they were there, I was so stressed. I didn't like them looking through my things. I didn't like them being in my house, using my bathroom, wearing my clothes. I didn't like any of that. And even now as an adult, I hate when people come over to my house. Sometimes it's caused issues with my husband where he wants to have friends over, and I'm like, I don't want your friends to come over. Whenever there was big sleepovers, I would get so anxious. I preferred to have sleepovers at a hotel or at someone else's house, but not at my house. I began public speaking and acting pretty young. I realized that I was good at it because whenever I was on stage, people listened to me. People understood me. And it was kind of liberating to be in a position where people were listening to me and people were looking at me and they got it. So I got really good at speaking and acting because it was a form of communication that was natural to me. Anger and unforgiveness. I was loyal to you until I wasn't. You betrayed me. You were dead. You were dead in my eyes, and it's still kind of true to a certain extent. I couldn't forgive people because I couldn't understand disloyalty. I couldn't understand betrayal. I couldn't understand any of those things that are so common with humans. I just didn't understand it. And then that's when my depression began because of my anger and unforgiveness. I was depressed because people were different to me. I wondered if I was. I remember asking my mom, "Am I retarded and you're not telling me? Is there something that is super obvious that I can't see?" And I was very depressed. I would. I think even early on, I had contemplated suicide. I would self-soothe in pulling out my hair or poking holes in my skin or things like that. I still had that same overactive imagination in my early teen years when I was alone. Before, I would talk to my imaginary friend in public and it was kind of acceptable. When I realized it wasn't acceptable, at 12, 13, 14, didn't mean it went away. I still had my imaginary friends, but I had them when we were at home and I was alone, and nobody could hear what I was saying, nobody could hear what I was thinking, and I would just indulge in that pretend world. I began to notice I was different at around 13. People liked me because I was different. People liked me because I was innocent but immature. It's hard to explain. I saw the bigger picture that adults see. I saw past the little things that teenagers, early teens are all obsessed with and all about, and it's like, it's all about this, all about that. And it wasn't about that for me. I kind of saw the bigger picture. I had dreams, I had hopes, I had aspirations, and I was working towards them, and a lot of people saw that as mature, but in reality I was very immature because I was lost in my fantasy world. I had the social things, so that's why they liked me, because I appeared, they saw me as a breath of fresh air. They wanted to be able to relax and be themselves. They could do that around me, and people hated me because whenever they wanted me to live up to a certain expectation, I was unable to meet that. Whenever they wanted me to empathize with them, I couldn't do it the way they wanted me to. They didn't like when I was difficult or argumentative. That's why they disliked me. My closest friends in my early teen years, it's funny, one of them, she used to bully me when I was a lot younger, but her and I ended up becoming friends when we were teenagers, and I liked her because she was also a breath of fresh air, and we kind of had that in common. She was very honest. She didn't really have a filter. She didn't have Asperger's, for sure, because she was very emotionally intelligent. Sometimes she was even manipulative, but her and I became friends because we felt that we could always be honest with each other. I had another friend that she was very loyal and she was very accepting, and I'm sure she thought I was weird and she had issues with me sometimes, and but she was a very loving, accepting person, and I reward loyalty with time, and that's just how I am. If you're loyal to me, I will be there with you till the end, and that's how her and I became friends. Another one, she was kind of naive, and I felt like I had the upper hand with her. I could normally get her to do what I wanted. That was another friend that I had. And then I had a couple of guy friends who, for some reason, accepted me how I was, exactly the way I was. They almost took pride in being my friend, and it was really cool. You know, they weren't ever interested in me in a relationship, and, you know, sometimes I was interested in them, but they weren't at all interested in me in that way, but they liked me as a friend, and I liked them as friends because they gave me a kind of acceptance that I never had before. But again, with these friendships, they weren't close. They were very, very distant, and they were kind of close to each other, and we had our moments that were special, but it wasn't like normal friendships where we talked to each other every day, where we knew all about each other. It wasn't like that. It was a very different type of friendship that I had with these people. It's very distant, but very loyal. My later teen years, I started to get mixed feelings about church because church people had a certain look, had a certain expectation, and I was not a church person. I was very different, and you heard in that spoken word kind of my feelings about church growing up. And I preferred to work with the children. I preferred to go to the old people class where they talked about all of the little details of things. But I loved the Bible, and I loved God, and I loved Jesus, and I'll get more about my relationship with God, but church I didn't like. It was very difficult for me. I got obsessed when I was a little bit older with people and personalities, because people were very different to me and I wanted to understand them. I would figure everything I could about someone. I would try and figure out everything about their personality. Sometimes I would appear obsessed or stalker-ish because I wanted to know everything about certain people and their personality. My grandparents had Alzheimer's, and that was a big point in my life where I changed. And it was a really hard time for me, seeing them go through that, and the relationship I had with them, knowing that it wasn't real, because I felt so open with them and I felt so close to them, but it wasn't who they were. It was almost like an imaginary friend thing, but it was painful because it was real. It was a real person. It wasn't an imaginary friend, but it was an imaginary relationship because they didn't remember who I was. They didn't remember who I was related to. They couldn't even remember any of the conversations we had. But those moments with them were so big to me, and it was just so hard realizing that those moments really didn't have much substance to them because of the Alzheimer's. I was perceived as a goody two-shoes that liked to break the rules. Basically, I liked the rules, but I didn't like the rules. I wanted to do the right thing, I guess is the best way to put it. But if I didn't think it was the right thing to do, I wasn't going to do it. If you were going to tell me to do something that I didn't think was the right thing or that I thought was unnecessary, I wasn't going to do it. But when it came to doing the right thing, I was big on doing the right thing. And to me, everything was black and white. This is right, this is wrong. And I think that was a big issue sometimes in relationships is when I told someone they were doing something wrong, I didn't want to see their perspective on it, because to me it's like, I don't care what your perspective is, it's still wrong. I blamed my homeschooling and parents. I got blamed. They got blamed not just by me but by other people, that my social awkwardness was because they sheltered me, and sometimes I felt like it was their fault that I was different, and when really it was just they didn't try and change me when everyone else did. So I like that they let me be who I am, looking back on it, even though in the moment I wish that they would have tried to change me like everyone else did. I was very interested in film in my older teen years. I guess a little bit I was interested in it when I was really young, because I liked the idea of being able to create a whole world and let others see it exactly the way I saw it. But that kind of was more prominent in my older years, because when I was younger I didn't have a camera, I didn't have any of those things, but when I was older I did, and I could kind of create those things. And I never completed them, but that's kind of where my interest really started to grow. My costuming obsession became more subtle in those years. The extreme costuming was reserved for Halloween and costume parties, but my costuming was I guess I would dress like characters that weren't obvious costumes. I would dress like characters that wore normal clothes. So to me, I knew that I was that character, or I would dress like certain people. So to me, I knew it was a costume, but to everyone else, it just looked like I was wearing normal clothes. I would watch people's style, and I would notice how each style was different, and I would kind of copy it. But it was subtle enough that no one really realized it. I was a chameleon for sure. I tried to blend in with people. I tried to copy them. I tried to mimic them. It was very hard. I learned how to flirt a little bit, but I didn't really know what I was doing when I was flirting, so sometimes it just looked awkward, and sometimes it just looked uncomfortable and creepy. But I understood what flirting looked like. It was just hard. It was the thing that was hard for me to mimic. And that's just kind of what happened. I would try and become, what I thought people wanted me to be. People liked me because they thought I stood for something good. And I did, for the most part, because everything was black and white. During that time, people liked me because I stood for what was right, and I wasn't going to stand for what was wrong. And people liked that, and people liked that I was honest about things. People didn't like me because they thought I was stuck up. They thought I was arrogant. They thought I knew everything, and I thought I did too. I preferred younger or older friends during this time. Let's see, I think that this started to happen more in my in my early college years rather than my teen years, because my like senior year and stuff, I didn't really have any friends at all. But I guess during my early college years, my friends were, I had one friend who was very, very, very mature, and I was infatuated by her. She was my goal for how people should be, and sometimes she was a little bit controlling, and she was manipulative, and she was able to control me sometimes, but I really looked up to her, and she seemed to have her life all together, and I really liked her. I had another friend who was very authentic. She was very accepting. She was a lot older than me. Well, I guess not a lot older than me, but she seemed a lot older than me, because I think she was like 5 years older than me, and at the time it seems like a lot. But she was very compassionate and very loving, and that's what I liked about her. And of course she made me feel accepted, but I liked that she was like that with everyone, that she noticed the weak. She stood up for the weak. She was the voice for the voiceless, and I liked that in her. I had another friend who was like a lot of fun, and she indulged me in my imaginary world, because she was kind of like that too, and she was eccentric in that way too, and we would dress up and have tea parties, and that's how things were with her. I had another friend who was very spiritual, and she was very into other cultures, and I loved her openness, and I love her ability to learn something new every day, and I liked her. And then I had another friend. He was homeschooled like I was, and he was socially awkward, and he liked superheroes, and I kind of had a crush on him, like on and off at different times, but because we were both so socially awkward, it took me a long time to express that, and he didn't feel the same way, but it was a weird kind of relationship that I had with him. But with all of these people that I'm talking about, they're the ones that I felt closest to, but these people, I wasn't actually close to them in reality. They meant a lot to me, and I'm talking about these people not because we were best friends, like I said, that talked every day and we knew everything about each other, but it's just the moments that I had with them and the memories that I had. If I'm talking about these different people, I'm talking about them because they are the ones that meant something to me. They are the ones that I'll always remember. They're the ones that were there for me in different times of my life. But we were not actually close friends. We weren't best friends. We weren't like the way friendships look. They had their own best friends. It wasn't me. I wasn't part of their group. They had their own friends, but they still meant a lot to me. My first romantic relationship, it was very complicated. It was with a girl. She was a lot younger than me. She was in middle school and I was a senior, and I liked the fact that she was younger than me, and I felt like I had a lot of control in the relationship because of that. But I guess she kind of outgrew me. When she got older, she was more interested in partying and the things that I was not interested in, and she kind of drifted away, and to me that was a really big deal. There was never anything that sexual about it. It was a romantic relationship because we had expressed feelings towards each other. We would hold hands. We would, say that we were going to get married or whatever, but it wasn't a true romantic relationship that you might think of. We didn't kiss. We weren't exclusive. It was a strange relationship. The second romantic relationship, I to this day have no idea what the heck this was and what happened and how it fell apart. But the only thing I can think of is possibly that this person, he probably had mental or developmental issues as well, and we just clashed in every way possible. But I'm not really sure what we were. we weren't exclusive, that's for sure, because I was always scared of being exclusive. I was very scared of the idea of having a boyfriend or a girlfriend. That was very terrifying to me. And I think that he was the same way. He was very scared of commitment, and but that there was a little bit of romance in that. But again, it was very not deep. It was a very shallow relationship. There was no kissing, no sex, nothing like that. It was very, I don't know how to describe it. Not deep at all. And I think the way Asperger's really affected this in a bad way was, one, I became, because I get obsessed with people and personalities, I learned everything about him. I knew a lot about him. Because he was an important person in my life, I wanted to know everything there was to know about him. And and I didn't get a lot of social things, that I didn't understand that just because someone invites you somewhere doesn't mean they want you to go. And he would invite me places, and I would go every single time. And he thought that, why do you keep going every single time I invite you? And I'm like, well, because you invited me. And I think a big thing that has really hurt me in relationships while having Asperger's is that I can't grasp the idea that people lie for no reason in relationships. People will say that they like you when they don't, but then they'll say that they don't when they do. I don't understand why people keep crushes secrets, but why it's creepy if you tell someone that you have a crush on them. Like when I was younger, I kind of kept my crushes a secret just because I was friends with most of the people I had a crush on, and I didn't want to ruin the friendship because I didn't have friendships easily, and I think that I didn't want to ruin any relationship I did have. But I didn't understand why people who didn't have a relationship with someone, why they would keep the crush a secret. I didn't understand flirting, so I got very jealous. I thought whenever he was flirting with other girls, that meant that he was trying to get with other girls. He was a very social person, and because I had Asperger's, I would have a lot of social anxiety, so I would make him look bad. And that's kind of how Asperger's affected that relationship. He always wanted to be out. I never wanted to go out. And in the end, he didn't actually break up with me. He just all of a sudden told people I was stalking him. And I don't know why he would tell people that. My guess is either one, he has mental issues of his own, or two, because I was very fascinated by him, and I knew a lot about him. He thought that I knew all of these things because I was stalking him, or maybe because I always showed up to the things he invited me to, and if you're a stalker, you go where you're invited. I never understood it, why I was accused of being a stalker. That relationship has been the most confusing relationship in my life. When I think about it, I'm still very confused and honestly a little bit hurt, because this was like 5 years ago that this happened, and anytime I've seen him in public or I've met people who've known him, he has continued to say stuff about me. He has continued to put me in a bad light, and he hasn't moved on from me in a way that he wants to hold on to whatever he has against me. I don't know what it is, but he continues to tell people about it, and it gets back to me even now 5 years later. So whatever. That was that relationship. I think the first romantic relationship that was physical and sexual was when I was around 19. Oh my gosh, I just fell head over heels for this guy, and because he was the first guy that I was sexually attracted to. Before that, I was only sexually attracted to women, but him, it was very, very, there was a lot of pheromones, there was a lot of chemistry. It was like complete full-on lust, and I liked that he was different too. He was a very different person, but he was different in a good way. He looked different. A lot of people wouldn't find him attractive, but I found him very attractive. He was a bigger guy. He had a lot of tattoos. He was kind of a hippie, and I kind of liked that. I thought that he was very free-spirited. He was very one-of-a-kind, very original. He didn't try and blend in. He embraced the fact that he was different, and I liked that about him. And so we started out as friends because we both noticed that we were different, and we immediately had feelings towards each other. I mean, from the very beginning, we had feelings towards each other, and we expressed it. But when we actually decided to kind of be in a relationship, that's when things got really, really, really bad. I was head over heels for him. He was like, he was it. There was nothing in my life that was better than him. I was so in love with him. And, but with him, because we only knew each other like a month, 2 months, I don't know. It was a very slow, I wanted things to happen really fast, and he, like every other human being, wanted things to happen very slow. He's like, wait, I don't want to marry you, I just met you. Wait, no, I don't want to do that. It was just like, I was very extreme, and I came on very strong, and because I normally didn't express emotions to most people, but I expressed them to him, I expressed all of my emotions to him, I put everything on him, it scared him away, and he didn't want that. He didn't want the extreme pressure I put on him. He was interested in me, and he wanted to be in a relationship with me, but he didn't want so much at one time. And that was kind of hard because of my Asperger's, me not being able to know what boundaries are, what's okay to say, what's okay not to say, what kind of expectations you should have on someone. That really got in the way of my first romantic relationship, and it blew up. And when it didn't work out, I was depressed, I was suicidal. I mean, I didn't get over him until maybe, like, after I was married. I still had feelings towards him even after I got married, and it really ended up I had to focus on the relationship with my husband to be able to get past what I had towards my first romantic relationship that I guess had depth and had physical sexual things to it, because we kissed and we did sexual things, and that was a big part of it. And because sex was something that I did understand and I could understand, like I said, it was a very important thing to me. And he was the first one that I had that with. A lot of emotional breakdowns I would have whenever I felt like I burned a bridge, because in my college years I started to notice the things I was doing, how it was driving people away, it was driving friendships away and romantic relationships away. I would have breakdowns because I would watch myself burn the bridges and have no idea how they caught fire. I knew I was the one that burned it down, but I don't know how I burned it down, and it was very stressful. I tried to convince myself that I wasn't that different. I tried to convince myself that this was all something I could control, but I didn't know how to control it. I was very drawn to liberalistic culture, very like free-spirited, artsy, democratic types of cultures, but I was very conservative at the core because everything was black and white to me. Everything was either right or wrong, and I think a lot of liberalistic people think that everything is shades of gray, but that's not how I was. So I was an outcast to the liberals and to the conservatives, because I was too free-spirited and too unconventional for the conservative, but I was too structured and too moralistic for the liberals. And that's how I still am. I like to describe my early college years as a Taylor Swift song. That it was everything then nothing. I feel like a lot of her songs are, there was everything, then there was nothing, and that's how my life was. I very much related to Taylor Swift's songs, and not just her songs, but even like her interviews and her stories and everything that kind of happened in her life. I felt I could relate to, and I think that even now she's a big role model in my life, seeing how she, not so much because I think that she does respond in ways that I don't think are right, but I see that she seems to be really comfortable in who she is, And I noticed that from the beginning when she was first popular, and I noticed that now about her. So she was a big role model in my life. I considered myself queen of the outcast. I was either with people who were so popular that when they saw me and I didn't give them that high place everyone else did, they wanted to be friends with me, or I was queen of the outcast, meaning I saw people who didn't have friends and I wanted to be friends with them because I knew what it was like to be alone and I didn't want them to be alone. But that never lasted because most of the people that were outcasts that I was friends with, they had their own issues, and I do not have the emotional capacity to deal with any other type of crazy but mine. Late college, young adult, pre-baby years, I was taken advantage of a lot. Sexually, like money-wise, like a lot of different things I was taken advantage of because people were able to manipulate me easily, and I think most people had the ability to see things coming, and I never saw things coming. I was fine, and then I wasn't, like I said with everything else. And sometimes people were like, well, yeah, because this happened, then this happened, then this happened. How didn't you see that coming? And to me, that's just not what happened. I didn't know who I was because I was always masking, always being the chameleon, always changing around people. I didn't know what I really liked. I just knew what everyone around me was and what they liked and who they were, and I just kind of became a mirror. It's like whoever I was around in my later college years, I became that person. So that was really hard, identity issues and such. I loved the rule breakers because at that point I had done so many things wrong that the only people I could relate to were other people who had done so many things wrong. So I loved the fact that they made me feel like I was not that bad of a person. They made me feel like I wasn't that bad, or that they were so much worse. And I kind of liked that feeling of being around the rule breakers. I wasn't aware of the emotional or sexual or spiritual abuse that I had. I never really got physically abused by anyone ever in my life, but I guess it's kind of emotional, sexual, and spiritual. I say emotional because people would manipulate me and they would abuse me in that way. Sexual because a lot of people made me feel like I owed them sex. That you don't ever owe anyone sex. If you don't want to have sex with someone, you don't have to. Even if you thought you wanted to have sex with someone but you changed your mind like 5 seconds before, you still don't have to do it. Just because you said you were going to have sex with them and you changed your mind doesn't mean you still have to do it. You do not owe sex to your spouse. You do not owe sex to your anyone. Sex is something that only you decide and nobody else. Well, obviously, then that would be rape. But it has to be you. Nobody can decide whether or not you have sex. And I didn't get that until recently. And then spiritual abuse, a lot of people would blame certain things on me not having a good relationship with God. And I was spiritually abused in that way of saying, oh, you have issues because you don't trust God. Oh, what you're doing is because you're a sinner. There's something wrong with you because you're of your sin, or a lot of times the hell card got thrown at me, like you're gonna go to hell if you do this, and I was spiritually abused in that way. And I know that it's really sad that a lot of people are spiritually abused. But I know a lot of times I believed it, but it was really hard because I did have a relationship with God. Whenever people told me things that were outside of the character of the God I knew, it was very, very confusing for me because I knew my God and I knew how He saw me and I knew that He loved me. So it was just so hard when other people told me that He didn't, or that He didn't accept me, or that that was just really hard for me. I started to notice that At this point, I started to notice that maybe my issues weren't were maybe mental. I started to question whether I had mental issues. But anytime I did, I felt like, not with my family, because when I'm talking about my late college years, I lived in Dallas. So I wasn't really close to my parents, but the people that I was around in Dallas, they disregarded my mental issues as sin issues. They said, you haven't accepted the healing of God, you haven't casted away this demon, you haven't repented of this sin, that any issue I was having, it was disregarded as a spiritual issue, when really it was a mental issue. And I felt like anything that I said, you know what, I think that this maybe it's just something wrong with my brain, maybe I have a mental illness, and it was always like, no you don't, you're just a sinner. And then I started to believe that I wasn't really a human, and I still kind of feel that way. I was always hoping for an alien abduction. I was always hoping that, I wondered if maybe I was an angel that was placed as a human, but like I forgot that I was an angel. I know that that was one thing that for a little while that I believed, that I was an alien that had been, crashed on a planet and then was adopted. And even now, I still feel that way. And when I say always hoping for abduction, it's like I was always hoping to find out it was true. I was always hoping for, I guess you would call it, my Hogwarts letter, my Hogwarts acceptance letter. Like, yes, you are a witch. Congratulations. But that never happened. And sometimes, to be honest, and I'll get about that later, I am an alien, and I am not a human, and one day I will be abducted, but I'll get more to that later. But I know that earlier it was a different type of thing. It was truly a feeling of, oh, that's why I don't fit in, because I'm not a human. I'm just in a human's body. So like I said before, I was asexual, but after I had discovered sex, I was a slight nymphomaniac. Part sensory and part for the desire to connect with other humans. I was pansexual, bisexual, all of those things, because with my sensory, sex was very extreme to me. Of course it's supposed to be enjoyable, but to me, it was very enjoyable. And then also, I couldn't connect with other human beings. I couldn't understand humans, but I felt like I could connect with them sexually. So if I did that, I would understand people better. And, I had a lot of sexual partners during that time. Some of them I don't even remember. And it was a big thing for me that I had to really control my sexual desires and behaviors. I had very destructive behaviors. It's like I knew that I was going to burn the bridge, so I intentionally burned it. That way I could have some kind of understanding for why it caught fire. I was always pursuing for answers, but I never found them. I pursued answers in personality tests. I pursued answers in so many different things. I tried other religions, and I could never find the answer I was looking for until I got diagnosed, really. People liked me because I think at this point they were able to use me. I was so desperate at this point that people could get whatever they wanted from me. People hated me because they thought I was weak, and I was weak, so that's why people didn't like me. My closest friends. Okay, this is the only point in my life where my friendships were super close. Like, we talked to each other every day. We knew everything about each other. We were best friends, okay? This was the only time, and it was for a season. It was only for a season. So there were two that were slightly romantic. It's kind of confusing. The program I was in Dallas, you were not allowed to date. So because you couldn't date, so hard with Asperger's, trying to figure out if you like someone, if you should tell them, if you're if you're going to have a relationship with them afterwards, or it was very confusing. Romantic relationships during that time, because you weren't allowed to do anything with the emotions you were feeling towards someone. There were two people, it was a guy and a girl, that I had feelings towards. The girl took complete advantage of me. She used me, she abused me, all of those things she took advantage of. And I wanted her attention, her time, all of these things I wanted from her, and she completely took advantage of that. And then the guy, he and I started out as friends, but I developed feelings towards him because he was also really different, and sometimes I wonder if he has Asperger's too, because we were different in a lot of the same things. He was very intelligent, he was very different, and he seemed to have a very different perspective on the world. So this person, when I first met them, they were an atheist, and I thought that was very fascinating that they were so open to the idea of Christianity and God and all of those things after claiming so strong to be an atheist. I thought it was very cool that I had met someone who was so open to seeing new perspectives on things. He had a lot of the same social issues I did, in the fact that he didn't realize like flirting or things like that, and but I think his was a little bit worse than mine, because I noticed that, like, nope, this person doesn't like you, they're just flirting with you because I don't know why people flirt, but they do, but they don't like you. And I was always honest with him in those things, and I really liked that he was open and all of those things, and I knew that he didn't like me back, and I ended up telling him that I liked him, knowing that he didn't like me back. But he was an important person in this point in my life, because he helped me understand myself in a lot of ways. Another friendship I had was kind of like the friendship in my senior year, where she was able to control me a lot, and I looked up to her because she was confident, and she had a strong personality, and I mimicked her in a lot of ways. I like the way that I mimic behaviors and kind of become a chameleon. I was like that with her the most. She was drawn to me because I was different, and like I said, because I didn't give her the type of attention everyone else did. I didn't like worship her the way other people did, that I was such my own person that she kind of admired that. But after her and I became friends, I was so afraid of losing her that I kind of ended up becoming that person that everyone else did. And I put our friendship before a lot of things. I put her before myself in a lot of ways. I let her take advantage of me in ways that I really shouldn't have. And so that was a relationship that was very significant in my life as well. Another one was, she is still my best friend. Now, her and I aren't best friends the way we were then. We still talk on a regular basis. We haven't seen each other in a year. But she is probably the closest relationship I have that I've probably ever had, besides, my marriage, or my family. I don't know why we became friends, but I just kind of feel like we just did, and we just were. And we were friends, and she understood that I was different. She understood that I had issues, and she kind of liked that she loved that I was different. She loved all of the things that made me who I am, and it was the same thing with her, because she was also different. And her and I, we were a good fit. Another one I had, I know I'm talking about a lot of different people, but these were very important people during this time in my life. Another one, I really believe this person had Asperger's, and because her and I were so similar, people would often confuse us. They would call me by her name and her by my name. We were so awkward. We were so weird. We were so different. We were just completely the black sheep. We had our own kind of language with each other that nobody else understood. I understood her when no one else did, and she understood me when no one else did, but we didn't get everyone else. I don't know if that's making sense. Her and I, we were so similar that she was such an important person in my life, and it was so hard whenever I moved away, when I moved back here, being away from her, because I felt that she was truly the only person in the world that really understood me. And I still feel that way, that she is the only person in the world that can ever understand how I feel. Maybe because she's the only other person that I was close to with Asperger's. I think she has Asperger's, but I don't know for sure. And then another relationship I had was similar to the one where that she was really popular, but I didn't give her the same attention as everyone else. And she was also able to control me in a lot of ways, but with her, I had more limitations. I had more boundaries than I did with the other person. And her and I are still pretty close, but we still have boundaries, and I was close to her because I guess there was never really any BS between us. And if we didn't, we were always upfront with each other, and I really like authenticity, and I like when people are real, and she was that. She was too real sometimes, but I really liked her, and her and I are still, kind of friends. Another one that I was close to, I think that he probably had Asperger's too. He was a lot like me. He thought he was so funny, but he wasn't funny. He was only funny when he wasn't trying. He was very awkward. He was very different. He was also really close to the person that I had a crush on. They were really close friends because I guess between him, the one I had a crush on, and then the girl that I also believe had Asperger's, between the four of us, I believed that we were unstoppable, that we were I guess kind of the clique, because we were just kind of the ones that were very different from everyone else. The awkward ones, the ones that had issues making friends, but we were also very creative and very intelligent. And then the other relationship I want to talk about, I know that there's a lot, but there was a lot going on during that time, was this one girl who I guess she was the one that I was the catalyst for. I saw her as who I used to be. I saw her as very lost and very didn't know who she was, and I kind of felt like her, like I needed to save her, but things ended up blowing up between us in the end. And then romantic relationships, again, while I was living in Dallas, was with one person. I liked him because he was a rebel, because like I said, during this time I was drawn to the rule breakers, and he was a complete rule breaker. I remember one time, because I was the only one that had a vehicle, I was dropping off all of my friends to meetings with their probation officers. And I'm like, wow, so all of my friends have been in jail. And I thought that, and I was attracted to this person because I thought that they were outside of the rules, they were outside of authority, they did what they wanted, nobody told them what to do. We weren't, like I said, we weren't allowed to date in the program, and he didn't seem to care about that. And because he didn't care about it, I didn't care about it, so he and I dated. And it blew up again. The reason it was affected was because he was outside of the rule, he had no sense of loyalty. And because I'm an extremely loyal person, I was really hurt at the fact that he it was always one girl after another, but he still wanted me. And to me, I'm like, no, you can't be flirting with all these girls and still want to be with me, and you can't do all of these things and think that we're going to still be in a relationship. And that's how that ended up blowing up. And it was almost like, instead of me removing myself from the relationship and saying this isn't going to work, instead I tried to force him to change. And that's why it blew up, is that you have to do the right thing. You have to commit to me. You need to commit to me and stop flirting. And it's like I was forcing what I thought it should be on him, and that's why it blew up. My second relationship with I guess my first love, the one that I told you about, that the first time it was physical, and the first relationship that was deep and romantic, and that meant a lot to me. And at this point, like I said, I had feelings for this person the entire time. Even though I had other crushes and other relationships, my feelings for this person never went away because they were my first. I tried to go out with them again, except I tried to, because I was a masker and a chameleon and a pretender, I pretended that because I had been sexually with so many other guys that I wasn't attached to him. I pretended, oh, I'm not attached to you, but I still have feelings for you, so let's try this again. And I pretended that there was, that there wasn't as much there that there was. And again, because I wanted him so badly, and I wanted to marry him, and I wanted it to be him and I forever, and the whole time I was trying to hide the fact that I wanted that, because that's what scared him away the first time. It just was really painful for me. It was really painful for me to be so in love with someone that didn't love me that way back. And I guess that's the relationship that's, I guess, a scar that will never go away. Like, my feelings towards my husband are much greater than my feelings towards this person, but the feelings aren't completely gone. I still have kind of mixed feelings about that person. I still sometimes wonder what it could have been, and I kind of miss certain things about that relationship, but not so much that I would ever go back to it, because I know that that person is never going to be able to love me the way that I loved them. And because of my Asperger's and because of the way I am, the feelings between him and I could never be mutual, and it could only cause me pain, and I could only be jealous. And that's just something that's like the spear in my side, or not the spear in my side, what is it? I can't remember what it's called, but that's who that is. My first decent romantic relationship was with someone who got that I was me. He accepted it, he got it, he called me Sheldon at times, and he understood it. He's like, you know what? It's cool. That's kind of cool that you're different. It's kind of like a TV show, or you're like a character that I read in books, because he was very nerdy and he liked superheroes and stuff like that. That he kind of saw me as a protagonist type of person. And I think that's why he was drawn to me. He was drawn to me in the fact that I had the same type of character as the protagonist in every story. But it just didn't work out. It wasn't because of my Asperger's. It wasn't because of anything either of us did wrong. It just didn't work out for no reason. We handled the relationship maturely. We broke up in a mature way. So that was the first decent relationship I had. And then I didn't say this, but I was always at flight risk. Whenever things didn't go my way, I wanted to either kill myself, run away from home, lock myself in my room. I was a flight risk. Drugs, alcohol, any way I could escape the way I felt, because I felt emotions so much. I wanted to escape my emotions in any way I could to not feel the way I was feeling. So pre-diagnosis, when I got married, I think I attracted the kind of person who thought they could control me, because like I said, I had been taken advantage of a lot, I had been manipulated, and I think that this person saw, because I came on so strong, and I was the kind of person, so like, okay, now that we've dated 2 days, or when are we going to get married? That's the kind of person I was, that they were like, oh, I mean, I am this person's whole world. Well, obviously, I don't even have to talk in third person because we know who I'm married to. So anyway, James thought that he was my whole world because of the different things with Asperger's. He had that idea in his mind, and when he realized that he wasn't my whole world, he was insecure about that. And when he was insecure about that and he started displaying those insecure behaviors with like jealousy or sometimes controlling or whatever, how he displayed those things, I reacted in defense with being emotionally abusive, calling him names, telling him he was worthless, telling him I never loved him, all of those things that I reacted, and our marriage almost fell apart. But after the diagnosis, things got better because he understood why I am the way I am, and I understand the way that I am, that we are able to work together through this marriage to make it work. I had mixed feelings towards motherhood because I never connected to my biological mother. I couldn't have that mother-daughter type of connection, and I was afraid I couldn't have that with my daughter. A lot of things that parents described about their kids or being a mother, I couldn't relate to. I didn't get that. I think a lot of times things that, oh, it's just natural, you'll just know what to do, oh, you just figure out how to be a parent. To me, that didn't happen. I read the books on how to be a parent, and I did what the books say, and I'm still doing what the books say. I don't love my daughter any less than any other mom loves their child, but the type of love I have for her isn't the type that I just know what she needs. I don't know what she needs, and I know that's a big thing is because of my Asperger's, but I love her so much that I am willing to do all of the research it takes to figure out what she needs. Severe depression, in particularly when we moved to College Station. I was so depressed being away from my family, not having any friends. It was a college town where everyone knew each other. If they were families, I could not connect. It was a very different atmosphere. It was the worst depression I ever had in my life. The friendships I had were very dysfunctional. They were, I guess, kind of abusive, meaning the person that I was friends with took advantage of me a lot, and I felt used by them all the time, and so that's kind of how that was affected when I lived in College Station. And then when I moved back, it took a long time to get out of that depression. That's when I started seeing a psychologist, and I had been to the mental hospital, and I started seeking real medical help for this because I didn't know I had Asperger's yet. And so, you know, with the adjustment of the medications, a lot of things happened. The police were called. I was sometimes having to be held down by 20 people. A lot of things happened during that kind of transition stage. And I still got my obsessions. I still have to learn my limits. I can only spend so much money on my obsessions. I can only spend so many hours on them before I let them consume me. And I have to really be proactive in not letting my obsessions take over me. Keeping myself balanced is very hard. I'm still learning to cope with these social things. I'm deciding that I'm going to tell people straight away that I have Asperger's and tell them that what my issues are so that they can be aware of them. Whenever I'm worried if I'm getting taken advantage of, I talk to my husband, I talk to my mom. I talk to my husband and my mom about a lot of social things because I think they can tell me whether or not something I'm doing is okay or whether or not this person's just trying to use me. I'm still learning how to cope with those things. And so the biggest thing I want to talk about is my faith and how my faith correlates with Asperger syndrome. I am a very spiritual person, but I am not religious. I do not like the rules of religion. I don't like the church type thing, but I am very spiritual. And this is what I was going to get to when I said about the alien thing that I think I am. I think, now might not be true, but this is what I believe, that people with Asperger syndrome, it's not a disability, but it's a gift that was given to us by God, that we have the ability to see spiritual things that people that don't have Asperger's can't see. I think that we are able to see the world through God's eyes in a lot of ways, because a lot of times people ask for how does God see things or whatever, and I think God's given us the ability to see things that way. Like I said, noticing the little things, but at the same time noticing the big things. I think that there is a world that's kind of within this world that people don't recognize exists. The world where angels live, the world where spiritual beings live, and people can't see that, but people with Asperger's who have decided to follow God can see that. And I think even if they haven't decided to follow God, they can still see it. That's why there's a lot of New Age. That's why a lot of people with Asperger's have a lot of New Age type religions, because I think we have the ability to see the spiritual side of things, and we can understand the spiritual side of things that other people just can't understand. I think a lot of people with Asperger's embrace death. A lot of times I've seen people with Asperger's are obsessed with death. They love death. They watch movies about death. They are planning their funeral. I love cemeteries. I love death because I understand that when you are a Christian, death has no sting. Death has no control over you. That when you're a Christian, you have overcome death. And when you die, you are able to completely be a spirit. And to me, because I'm very spiritual, I am eager for that time where I no longer have to deal with all of these issues I'm dealing with in the world, with the social things, the language I can't speak. I won't have to deal with it when I die, because I will be pure spirit. And my spirit is what keeps me going. And I understand God and I understand Jesus in a lot of ways I think people don't understand in the Bible. Whenever Jesus says things and people don't understand that, they're like, what do you mean born again or whatever. I understood those things right away. People didn't have to explain that to me. A lot of times in church they say, oh, this is what Jesus meant. And no one ever had to say that to me. But a lot of times I notice in church people say this is what Jesus meant, and that's not what he meant. Because I have a relationship with him. And that's not what he showed me. That's not the way I saw it. And again, this is my perception. I'm not saying this is all fact. But I really do feel that my relationship with God and Jesus is a lot more personal and a lot deeper than others. And sometimes it's frustrating to hear other Christians say things that are not in the character of God, or say, oh, this is the Christian thing to do, or whatever, and it's not who God is, or they try and describe God in a way that isn't who he is. It hurts me a lot, and it angers me. It makes me so mad that they do that, because I think so many people are not Christians because they think they have a wrong idea of who Christians really are supposed to be. And that's really how I think Asperger's has influenced my faith, and Asperger's has made me a stronger Christian, because Asperger's has given me the ability to ignore the worldly things and focus on the heavenly things. And I think a big thing that I want to talk about is how God is bigger than my Asperger's, and how he has stepped into my life despite having Asperger's, where he has come in and he has said, I know you can't do this, but I'll do it for you. There have been times where I think that if God hadn't stepped in, I wouldn't have been able to do myself, I guess socially. Times that I've been able to empathize with people, or things that Asperger's would prevent me from doing, God has compensated for that in a lot of times in my life, communication. When I was unable to say things clearly, God took over my mouth and said things in a way that people would understand, while on my own I wouldn't be able to say it. But only in the spiritual things has he done that. Only in the things that have brought him glory, that have been able to turn around and bring him glory. He has been able to give me that ability to work past my Asperger's, past all of these things, in order to shut all of that out and just be the vessel he wants me to be in that moment. He has done several times in my life. I am so grateful for who God is in my life and the way he's working in my life. In particular right now, he's doing a lot for me. He's showing me how to love others the way he loves them. Very hard to do, especially when you don't like people initially. He's giving me patience with others who don't understand who I am or who won't acknowledge my disability. He's helping me with all of those things. He's helping me embrace that I'm different, but not be obnoxious about it. He's given me the opportunity to be in a beauty pageant where I get to represent what I know beauty is, and it's so hard because I feel like the type of people they want in beauty pageants is everything that I'm not, and it's very hard to get past my pride and my selfishness to look at everything through God's eyes, because beauty pageant is so self-focused. But yesterday I was really discouraged because I was rejected a lot because I was different, and because all of the pageant people are the pageant people and I'm just not a pageant person. And I was called out on it over and over and over again, several times. And I just think I've gone through all of these things I've gone through, yet I'm still here, confident and proud and happy and grateful and, just completely understanding the love of God. I've made it this far going through all of these things I've just talked to you about. And if something like the way I look, or you thinking I'm ugly, if you think you're going to tear me down by telling me I'm ugly or telling me I'm never going to win a beauty pageant, then you're basically saying that it's basically no different than a tin can thinking it can stop a train. At this point in my life, you're going to have to try really hard to stop me, because I'm not changing. This is who I am. This is who I'm going to be. We are Aspies. We are the mutant race.